Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Art Bar Poetry Series for inviting me. This is the second time I read here, this time online, of course, as we are all online. I know that I was introduced, but perhaps I could just say a few words about myself. So, the name is Irene Marks, and I'm a bilingual writer. So I write in English and Portuguese. I have 3 books of poetry published in Canada and 2 novels in English. And then I have a novel and a collection of short stories published in Portugal. And I have academic books and articles published in different parts of the world, including Canada, the States, etc. And I have 3 other forthcoming collections of poetry that have not yet been published. But today I thought I would read a couple of poems from the 3 collections that I have published so that you can get a sense of my writing style. I would say that my writing tends to be highly allegorical and I use a lot of spiritual imagery. So my poetry tends to be highly spiritual, transcendental. It has a philosophical, inquisitive tone, I would say. And there is also a concentration often on the body. The knowledge that we can recapture or regain from the body. So what we can call the non-rational intelligences, which is an expression used by Hélène Cixous, a French feminist writer that I admire and read a lot. And so this is to say that often we think that, using rationality and logic and your mind in that sense is the best way to attain knowledge, but perhaps it's not. And many will argue that knowledge is sort of, what we internalize as being acceptable in society. So in order to regain other types of knowledge or knowledge that falls outside of societal ideologies that can be oppressive, we need to restore our access to the non-rational intelligences, the body, the unconscious, the spirit. So on that note, I thought I would start with a short poem that I wrote in my early 30s, and of course I'm much older than that now. And it's a poem published in my first collection of poetry titled Wearing Glasses of Water. So this collection was published in 2007 by Tsar Publications, now called Mauenzi House. And so I wrote this poem in my early 30s, and at the time I was doing my PhD in comparative literature at the University of Toronto, and I was reading a lot of different people, of course, philosophers, writers, art critics, etc. And I was reading Lucy Irigaray. Lucy Irigaray is a French feminist philosopher whom I came to admire quite a bit, along with Clarice Lispector and Hélène Cixous, whom I mentioned already. And so some of you, many of you may know the work of Lucy Irigaray, and she often concentrates on this, relationship between the self and the other, and in the sense of the relationship between male and female, and this idea of constructed gender ideology. And she does not think that men and women are the same, and she does think that we have different bodies, we inhabit different bodies, and therefore we are different because, biology does count to a certain extent, even though, of course, she's also a believer of social ideology and how that can restrict, our performance as men or women. But she speaks a lot about how the self, whether it's a male or a female, or I suppose a transgendered person, even though she doesn't address that necessarily directly, as far as I know. But if I'm a woman, then how do I know myself? I know myself not just, staying within myself, but in fact, it's necessary for me to connect with the other who is different from myself and to have that physical connection, that touch. So this idea of touch is very important for her. And again, we go back to what I said before, this idea of using the language of the senses or the non-rational intelligences as a way to to gain knowledge about yourself. So on that note, I will start with this short poem titled The Version N, which, as I said, I think was influenced by some of my readings of Lucy Irigaray, also Clarice Lispector, Hélène Cixous. This poem is titled The Version Hen. So I will start. I am Lydia. I come to bring you soup. In your illness, chicken broth soup, made from a virgin hen who slept beside us last Sunday when we made love, when you were still healthy in your skin, in your earth, in your pelvic bone, which I caressed, which you opened to me, so that I could peek through and envisage the road that might lead ahead, somewhere, someplace, some wet mucous membrane, from within and from without, the borders of your body. Last Sunday, when we felt the fecundity of a caress, I am Lydia, and I come to bring you soup. And in fact, the expression that I use here, the fecundity of a caress, is directly borrowed from Irigaray's writings. So I will continue with another poem from this collection. And again, you will see an emphasis on the body and on the female body, because I write as a female. I identify as a female, and so I experience the world as a female. So you'll find that in my poetry a lot. And as a female, the challenges that I encounter, that we women encounter. The title of this poem is The Body of Good. My body is a long white plain or a linen bed sheet extended from here to where you are, bare and milky, like the runway of ancestral plains that travel between here and now, between here and yesterday, traveling to the light of tomorrow. I cannot dress it up, because if I do, it will lose the light it gives away freely, unwinding it like the wild electric mill of my old and forever present longing. I cannot dress it up, because if I do, it will lose the light it gives away freely, or the space it opens for your planes to land safely and on sacred and moist ground, so that you can then move on and create beautiful shows that will enhance the world's smaller platforms. I cannot dress it up, because if I do, you will be barred from the feathery milk on my back, on my belly, on my plain hills. I cannot dress it up so that you can see it bare and white and long, unwinding the silent wind of this world's memory. I cannot dress it up, this body of good. So now I will move to my second poetry collection, published in 2012, again by Mawenzi House. And this one is titled The Perfect Unraveling of the Spirit. So I'll read two poems from this collection. And in these two poems, you will see that there is a more direct reference to my life or my family members from Portugal, in Portugal. I was born in Portugal and I came here when I was 20 years old. So this poem has some reference to that, and the second one from this collection will as well. And this poem is specifically about the passing of my father. And the title is Passing the Passage. Under the tip of my tongue, I grasp for words, sounds before meaning that will say who you are, how you lived, and how you left us to go away and swim in the other current under the node of dark nymphs, those goddesses that sing of winds below the sphere and breed breaths under your skin. My mother sighs constantly, giving voice to those kisses she never gave him, even in the moments she really wanted to forget the repression of the Catholic Church and the somber sermons of Padre Levitu. I want to cry for you, a real cry from the right side of my soul. I want to, but it does not come, not now, not yet, as though to avoid the time passed between the moment you were born and the moment you died. I want to cry, but I'm not willing, not yet, ready to emerge from the full summers of uncontained hydrangeas, those wild, crazy flowers that do not know what thirst is, bursting into miscegenated colors never before seen. Under my tongue, I compose meanings and words outside of the alphabet, which do not yet say how I feel about your passage to the other nether, after this nether full of fools. I think thoughts of guilt, voices that let me tell me that I could have saved you, given you more days to live, more walks in the full vines of your many lands, or that when you died I should have been there, easing the moment of your last blink, or should at least have lifted the veil of the coffin to stare at your body and touch your cold hands directly, like I did with your face, scaring away the flies, impatient to feast upon you and your sacred nothing. I could have, or I should have, because nothing is enough in the face of your timely death. The second poem that I'm going to read from this collection is titled The Curious Book. There is a curious book on the shelf that is unlike the others. I can tell by the spine that is wearing out its wings, as though the book itself contains not enough knowledge and is reaching out to others to peek at their lines in an attempt to decipher the mysteries of the world, which are many, ancient, and so profound. The other books, as though jealous of the God they know, like mean-spirited, insecure priests, do not freely open themselves to this curious thing, but hold themselves tightly together, become closer to neighbors on the same shelf. Those not so eager to reach the bottomless pit that is our universe. I sit on my old sofa, which is also wretched in its own condition, which I watch from afar in silence, savoring the ways of the curious book and the manner in which its brothers and sisters lie in their sleep, satisfied with their self-contained knowledge, like premature dead children, or perhaps cynical elders who have learned that curiosity can kill. And it is in this reminiscing that I remember my father Adelino, recall how happy he was just knowing his cows, using their dung to seal off the oven in which we baked cornbread that exhaled the sublime scent of the mountains where the cows had gone grazing only the day before. I recall his shiny eyes and how he said that happiness and good living can be found in the most unlikely places, and fools are those who keep going in circles and circles, trying to unveil what must remain closed from the eye of reason, primal dogs who cannot stop trying to catch their own tails even when they grow old. I will now move to my third poetry collection published in 2013 by Guernica Editions, and the title of this collection is The Circular Incantation, an Exercise in Loss and Findings. So I'm going to read a poem that is quite long, and this poem is, obsessive in nature. We could argue it repeats, or it recalls, it brings up images, image after image, to try and rescue some beauty or some solace, to find solace in a world that sometimes can be difficult to understand, to bear, to accept. So the poem is titled, I Look for You. I look for you in the cuts that I make on my fingers when I could cook small meals for myself at night. And then I look for you again in the blood running and mixing with the green leaves that I ingest slowly, the body of Christ, in its full bloody and suffering form, like a sacrilege cannibal. I look for you in the blood and plasma that I give birth to every 28 days. So regular is the life that is trying to find a beat inside me. I look for you in those dead morsels of tissue mixed with all the vitamins that I ate that month. I mix them in my hands as if killing them again, perhaps to feel responsible for a crime that is truly yours, not mine. I mix them and then I eat them, hoping that will be redeemed into life. I look for you in the sweat that my body leaves on my bed sheets. I keep those sheets unwashed for months and months so that my chances of finding you become greater and greater. I look for you when I close my eyes and enter the bright shadows of the wonder underworld, that precinct where Pluto, the Greek god, keeps guard of good and evil. I look for you in the space that separates each of my 5 fingers and in the hollowness of my belly button. I look for you in the slow dance of the curtains of the living room when it's very hot outside and time seems to have stopped in a moment of goodness. I look for you in the shadow of the white lilies and in the discreet fluorescence of the hydrangeas, both growing vividly in the savage mountains of the land where I was born. I look for you in the waters of the river Zamia that run with the placidity of a tired but sure love affair. I look for you in the spots I can see on the surface of the moon when it's fully illuminating our planet, and I do so lying down in concentration with my back on the wet grass, allowing the dew to cover my entire body and making it the river of drops and drops, one by one, one by one. I look for you in the antennas of the butterflies and in the black and yellow rings of the busy honeybees, and then I also search the fogs of the winter and the thunder of the summer to find pieces of you that might be scattered through the various rings that constitute the universe. I look for you in the emptiness of the startled birds and wait for the beginning of birth to arrive. I look for you in the many tiny spaces that exist between all the hairs I have on my head, slowly putting my fingers through each and each. I look for you in the wideness of the landscape when only silence fills the golden chant of nothingness. I look for you at dawn in that moment between the yes and the no when everything becomes a possible theory. I look for you in the middle of the undulating wheat fields when their color is between green and eternal golden beige. I look for you in the bareness of the blackboard before I inscribe the words in and sully the neatness that could have been you. I look for you in the noise that my feet make when I walk on stony roads, or in the silence that comes when I choose somersaults and avoid the chatter of the rough and irregular ground. I look for you when I sleep with my eyes open in the middle of the day and the rhythm takes me into the concaves of caves, sliding me into the beautiful oblivion. I look for you when I stare at the waters of Lake Elias and see the sheen that my face is capable of producing under your translucent, guided brilliance. I look for you on the broken seashells that pierce my naked walking soles, making my blood soak in the sand, that vast sheet of immense softness, the nothingness of my eternal mimes. I look for you in the remembrances of my infancy, when I used to put my head on my mother's lap, when she would rummage my hair with her thick, deformed fingers, and I would smell the many cooked meals and plasma wounds of all the birds she gave to. I look for you in the pure and unadulterated taste of the avocado, that fruit full of healthy oils, and then in the salt that I add to it, and then again in the taste of both melting in my mouth and making me strong and able. I look for you in the taste of the green apple when I first sink my beautiful white teeth into it, those teeth that keep their lasting health despite the fact that I used to be a hardcore bulimic, constantly throwing my body into the toilet bowl and wasting it into the putrefying gutter of the dirty underworld, where evil spirits can cause havoc when Pluto, in a moment of optimistic sentiment, is not keeping careful watch and decides to search for the little flowers that might grow even there. I look for you in your shiny manly shoes, and then in your careful tight tie, and then, not satisfied with what I see there, I look for you in your naked, vulnerable image, which I imagine only to satisfy my most profound yearning, the yearning of a woman who cannot stand the pretension of exacerbated and insecure masculinities. I look for you in the smell that I gather when I put my hand in that forbidden place, and I keep firmly locked in with the pressure of my crossed fingers. I look for you when I shave my hair and pass my hand through the crisp, clear, clean crust of my eternal skull, when the memory of all my African ancestors pulsates with the vigor of an incandescent fountain of life. I look for you in the letters of the Greek alphabet, between the Alpha and the Omega, and in that vacant space I meditate about your way of being, and at points become almost satisfied with my theories about what it is that you might be, and what it is that pulsates in your carnal, bloody, full of visceral organs. I look for you when, in the deep desperation and bareness of the moment, I imagine the many complete instants I've had in the past of my life. And this is an exercise that I do often, so that the actual emptiness of the moment will be filled with some reason of being, a reason for being, and at least the reimagining of happiness. I look for you at Sunday service when the minister of God reads from the Old Testament, that part of the book about the Hebrews and their dream about finding their promised land, or the other part from the Testament when the shepherd of mere sheep becomes the actual pastor of God by the great force of some metaphoric, metamorphic, transmutative transubstantiation, the intervention that testifies to the true truth of truth. I look for you in the inflated varicose veins my mother has all over her deformed legs, and then in the nervous moment when I wait for them to burst. I look for you in my niece's plump little legs, which I kiss with the laughing eagerness of a stunned child who has discovered the perfect degree of composure in the tissue of her own DNA. And then again, when I stare at her long, dark lashes and the even darker eyes peeking underneath. I look for you in that map that I keep close to my hand, in the rivers and vessels of rivers, the ridges, creases and slopes of mountains and hills, in the fauna and flora of the 5 continents, in the seas and oceans, in the lakes and puddles of fresh and putrid smelly water, in the rotten fishes and the dead carcasses of the massive elephants of the Karoo, I'm down by ivory fanatics in the papayas that I pick from the floor of Brazil. I look for you in the dense, intricate forests, minutely searching for the tip of your finger under the dead pine needles. And I rummage the thick, moist moss quilts, looking for the needle in the haystack, the needle that will bite me and make me bleed of happiness, of life. I look for you in the milk that I make my breasts produce. When I have doubts about my reproductive capacities and motherly instincts, I squeeze them with force, and they hurt, and sometimes I see blood in lieu of milk, leaving them and crying my life out of me. I look for you when I feed the grain to the chicken, and when they run after me looking for more. I look for you like this. Such is the patience of my love. I will read another poem called I Wait for You, and you will see that there is a continuation of some of the ideas or feelings or thoughts that you find in the previous poem. I wait for you. I wait for you until my body is rotten. I wait for you until all the humidity that inhabits my cells falls down and merges with the life of the worms and the mud of the streams below, until it bleeds its moist liquid into the 5 rivers that run underground where Pluto, the Greek god, hides his evil spirits. I wait for you, kneeling down for centuries and centuries, like an old statue in eternal adoration, like a broken stick, putrefying itself to nourish the black, slimy snake scrawling the surface of our large earth. I wait for you with a faintly lightened lantern barely calling attention to itself, thinking that true love will be guided to my undying persistence without the illumination and intrusion of the great torch. I look for you with my eyes, staring at the moment when your entrance into me will restore my life into its primal and early state. That first moment when I planted myself in this position, waiting, attending like a servant the expectation of my life, the arrival of the mailman or the transcendental locksmith. I wait for you with my old body falling into the rotten state of nothingness until I smell and no one will dare come near me. I wait for you kneeling down like a prayer to the invisible. I wait for you like this. Such is my undying love. I'm going to end here. So this collection is titled The Circular Incantation, an Exercise in Love and Findings. And so, as you can gather from the poems that I read, there is an obsessive, idea running, or this idea that one must find beauty and resilience and hope, even when we are in our most desperate state. And again, there is an emphasis on the body, on that knowledge that comes from the body, from the unconscious. I'm going to end here, so I hope that you enjoyed some of my words. Thank you for listening. Take care, and be well.